Hey guys, Claire here, and in today's video, we're going to talk about all things Harry and Meghan. Now, to get started, Suits has been killing it, you guys. It's been breaking all kinds of records, and considering that it's a show that has ended 4 years ago, that's pretty incredible. Now, I've seen a couple of articles showing statistics like viewing figures, but the latest one showed that it amassed about 3+ billion viewing minutes between Netflix and Peacock's. So if you don't have Netflix and you want to check out Suits, it's also on Peacock. And 3 billion minutes of viewing time is insane. Like I said, for a show that is off the air for like 4 years now, that is incredible. And it's been so fun to see a lot of people on social media who have never seen Suits before or had never seen Meghan in her acting era, just really embracing it and seeing it and enjoying it and tweeting about it, talking about it on Instagram. Also, there have been a lot of jokes from some guys who are like, I can't believe like Prince Harry married Rachel Zane. He must be stopped. I even saw one say, can Prince Harry fight? Because I'm ready to risk it all. I'm in love. There was somebody else who had written something about, do you think Meghan is happy with this Harry guy? Because, do you guys think I can shoot my shot? Like, do I have a chance? So the talk surrounding Suits and Rachel's main character and Meghan has been really enjoyable. Sort of takes me back to the olden time when Meghan was on Instagram and Twitter, for all the old school Suits and the Tig girlies. If you know, you know. So that's been really fun. Also, we even saw Meghan was featured on the little video for Leo season from Michael Kors. It was basically just a little video of all the Leo celebrities, decked out looking fabulous. And of course, Meghan was included in that. So that was really nice. And on to the more serious things. Now, Prince Harry has been given the A-OK by the judge to proceed with his case against the Sun. There are certain elements of the case that was thrown out, but there were certain elements of the case that can proceed to a trial, which is essentially what Harry really wants. He wants everything to be in the court system, out in the open, exposed. It's not about the money. Like, unlike William, he didn't take the money in a hush-hush way. He wants everything to be out and exposed. And it's also interesting, and I've seen a couple of people on Twitter talking about this, the very direct distinction between how the right-wing and tabloid sources report on the judge's latest ruling, as opposed to how the more unbiased folk has been reporting on it. This is a very stark difference.
The press get away with whatever they want. Prince Harry is one of the few people who's financially in a position that is able to take action through the civil courts. He's pursuing justice for himself, which he's entitled to do. But the fact that he's bringing an action means that we, the public, will at least get to understand some of the realities of the hacking and unethical conduct scandals in the press, which the government and the industry have tried to cover up.
He's on a bit of a crusade.
Well, yes, but I understand, because my phone was hacked.
Was it?
Yeah, and I didn't know. The police told me.
Okay, so do you know what stories ended up as a result?
Oh, yeah, I mean, because my life was almost ruined. From 1995, when I went into EastEnders, till about 2011 or 12, my phone was hacked, and I didn't know anything about it.
So when that happens, you see stuff in the papers, you think, where's that come from?
Yeah, but not just that. People had told me certain things that nobody else knew, and people were accusing me of actually leaking these stories to the press. So friendships went, everything went, and then the police, I was sent, they sent me a message to say, we need to talk to you, and they said, right, your name is involved, in one of the books of one of the journalists. And I went, really? And I thought, no, that makes complete sense.
It's only half of this case has actually been thrown out. There is still the second half of the case ongoing, which is gathering information by illegal means.
Yeah, which has happened to all of us. So it means all of us can go to court.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe he's the trailblazer for it.
Well, he's going to need a lot more evidence than he had before, by the sounds of it, because the last time he was there, he actually at one point said that he was hoping that they could tell him things. In your view, then, sorry, go on.
I think that's a bit. I'm not sure that's quite fair.
You don't think that's fair?
I mean,
Why?
he has submitted a lot of evidence, and if the submissions by the newspaper that effectively hadn't submitted evidence were correct, then the judge would have chucked the claim out. But the reason he hasn't chucked the claim out is that he thinks there's plenty enough evidence that's been produced by Prince Harry to let the claim go forward. So the issue of whether he has a decent set of evidence has been determined by the fact that the claim will go to trial.
Okay, so interesting. So this could be quite serious for NGN. Could this be a serious, could it cost them millions? Is that what they could be looking at?
This has never been about the money. I'm quite sure that Prince Harry will already be offered a vast sum of money in settlement, which of course his brother has accepted. And now that he's fought his way through to a trial, he'll be, I'm sure, offered yet more money. But he's made it clear this is a matter not of money but of principle, that he feels, and as someone who has acted for a lot of people who've been the wrong end of newspaper wickedness, he feels that the newspapers need to be held to account. That was always his intention. He's going to be able to do that at a trial. And speaking for myself, I think he's shown immense courage in deciding to take on one of the most powerful organisations, not only in this country, one of the most powerful organisations in the world.
But anyway, Harry's case is going forward, so yay Harry. I'm sure that in time the Sun will try to offer him even more money in an effort to settle, but I think Harry and Hugh Grant, and there are a couple others as well, just really want their day in court. Now, we've already seen a couple of stories. There was one, was it today or yesterday, from the Daily Beast, basically saying that the royal family is, they're upset that Harry is going to court, that this case is going forward. And it sort of reminds me of Harry's comments in Spare. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, the way his father and brother responded to him taking these tabloids to the court, it was sort of like, they're defending a friend, like he was taking one of their friends to task. And when you look at it, I wouldn't say that those relationships are friends. But I don't know, I feel like for Charles and William and Camilla, well, Charles and William, I don't know for Camilla, I feel like Camilla actually see these people as stepping stones to get her PR out there. But I genuinely don't think that Charles or William really sincerely likes the people in the press, but it's a necessary evil for them to get those good PR points and to keep certain stories on the DL. Now, we've also heard this week that the Windsors are planning a slew of charm offensive tours to various Commonwealth nations in the next 2 years, or within the next 2 years. I'm not surprised that they're doing this, considering the very sort of cold, sometimes hostile reactions from people within the Commonwealth. I mean, I've read an article about the Jamaican president basically saying something to the effect of, or prime minister, sorry, not president, prime minister, saying that, the monarchy should have ended with the former monarch. And quite frankly, I agree with him. Basically talking about severing the ties of the Commonwealth. And there were also articles, I believe, was it Brazil or is it Belize, that is changing their currency. Also, there is another article stating that I believe 8 nations of the Caribbean that are ixnaying Queen Elizabeth's imagery on their currency, the Eastern Caribbean currency. And to that I say, in the words of Lizzo, it's about damn time. Now, there have been even more releases from the Byline Investigations team as it relates to the Dan Wootton story. Even more receipts, more disgusting and seedy allegations. And still, like, certain members of the British press are mute. Like the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Express, the Mirror, even the Telegraph. I mean, Camilla Tomney has legit wrote articles about Harry and Meghan not being able to water their lawn because of a drought or a sighting of a bobcat or some sort of nonsense like that. Like, you're legit writing an entire article in the Telegraph about Prince Harry and Meghan's Montecito home in an entirely different continent, but one of your own is accused of doing some really heinous stuff to co-workers using resources from the job, from the Sun, those perks to set traps for co-workers. Like, really disgusting stuff. There is even parts of it talking about the R word, okay? The hard R word. And they're quiet. Talking about Harry and Meghan, but Dan Wootton, nothing.
Not only is he still on the air, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a ratings boom for GB News. In many ways, this is the perfect scandal for them, and I will tell you why. If you're someone who thought the BBC was too woke, you probably love GB News. It was set up as an alternative to Sky News and BBC News. It's Fox News with an accent. It was created for the kind of people who feel, quote, underserved and unheard by their media, end quote. That was uttered during their founding when Andrew Neil, who's a political broadcaster, was announced as chairman for GB News. Andrew also said, quote, that's what we'll do. Feature anchors with a bit of edge, attitude, and personality. People will make an appointment to view them, end quote. This is not about news. This is about outrage. But I will say something, Dan Wootton certainly has an attitude, among other things. Also, in August of 2022, there was a big shakeup. Discovery sold their stake. And some of its existing investors are Legatum Ventures, which is a Dubai-based investment firm co-founded by GB News chairman Alan McCormack and Marshall. GB News has only been around for about 2 years and has such lovely people as Nigel Farage working for GB News. I am by no means an economist, but the second paragraph seems important. A hedge fund owner should never be allowed to own a media company that can move markets. Beyond conflict of interest, it's market abuse. Cool company you got there. Depending on how all of this goes with Dan Wootton, this could be seen as a win for GB News. Dan's slot does incredibly well in the ratings, and this is exactly what a channel founded on outrage and grievance lives for. One of their own, being attacked and maligned by the woke left media. Cancel culture run amok. And it's against one of their own. Because apparently enough people tune into Dan because they like what he has to say and they believe him. This is Dan becoming the story. Someone that GB News' audience is already intimately familiar with. He can become sort of a martyr. And besides that, people are tuning in just to see if Dan is actually going to acknowledge further these allegations against him, which is good for ratings. Dan lacks a moral compass and plays fast and loose with the truth, just like the company he works for. There's truly someone for everyone.
After reading part 4 of Byline Times' investigation into Dan Wootton, my main question was, what are they waiting for? I don't think we've ever seen the UK media tread so lightly with a story, especially one with actual evidence. So I wanted to take a look back at all the articles and the evidence that has been presented. Byline's doing an incredible job reporting on this, but there is a lot of information coming out quickly, and I wanted to organize it for myself. This story really broke with Alex Truby, followed by Kev Sutherland. So they were the first 2 victims of Dan's that we knew about. The first article that Byline Times released on this investigation told the story of 4 victims who each said that Martin Branning reached out to them and offered money for illicit images. So now we have 6 witnesses or victims. Also in part 1, Byline says they spoke with someone who was a trusted friend and former colleague to whom Dan revealed he was Martin Branning. That's witness or victim number 7. Part 2 includes information on the multiple witnesses from The Sun that Dan bullied and sexually harassed. With the 6 that we know of, that makes 13 witnesses or victims. Part 3 revealed the emails between Martin Branning and a man he met at a London club who he blackmailed for 10 years, including blackmailing him to get a video of one of Dan's colleagues. That makes 15 victims or witnesses. In Part 4, Byline shared that 2 men who were adult male performers said they were paid by Dan Wootton, not Martin Branning, to film themselves with men that Dan selected. Not random men, men from Dan's circle. And they believe that these films were an attempt to get a one-up on them, because why else would you want someone filmed without their consent unless you were trying to get compromising material on them? A third man said he was also paid to make a secret video of a man who did not consent while at London's Savoy Hotel for the BAFTAs. All of the witnesses and victims in this article bring us to 25. So I've counted at least 25 victims or witnesses, and I'm sure that there are more. Plus, we have email evidence of payments, hotel booking receipts, traceable evidence recorded on iPads logged into Dan's Apple account, and correspondence from Dan's work email. So again, what is the UK media waiting for? My thoughts are there might be more to the story with the payoffs and the NDAs at The Sun, and they're worried about what they're liable for. But also, one of the reoccurring things we see in each of these articles is the inclusion of Dan's colleagues. He's either bullying and harassing them, pretending to be Martin Branning and asking them for illicit images, or in some instances paying men to try and film them in videos without their consent. To think that Dan has compromising material on members of the UK media is not a stretch. In fact, I would say it's probable at this point. But remember, Alex, Dan's ex, described him as terrifying, and they know that if Dan goes down, he will take them all down with him.
Part 4 of Byline Times' investigation into Dan Wootton just dropped. And let me tell you, they know how to write a headline. But unlike sensationalized headlines from tabloids, this one actually delivers. You know I love some receipts. Dan Wootton paid porn stars with Sun's debt money for covert catfish sex videos. That is not the headline Dan Wootton wanted to see before he goes on his GB News show. But the fact that these drops appear to be timed for hours, if not minutes before Dan goes on air it's well played. This is something I have been discussing in my past videos on this investigation. Where's the money coming from? And one train of thought was that he was just slipping it in billables for News of the World and The Sun. And that apparently proves correct because they have evidence. Here it is, Dan Wootton, Sun UK, June 10th, 2016. Hi, I need blank set up as a new payee, please. He needs to be put down for $1,500 urgently on the Amber Heard splash 4-5 from last week. Thanks, Dan. According to Byline Times, this fee was for a porn star. As the article described, Dan Wootton would rent Facebook profiles from adult male performers. He would pretend to be them, he would trick his targets into meeting up with these performers, only to be filmed with covert cameras that Dan provided. How did Dan have time to work with all of this criming? I'm not an expert in UK law, but my understanding is that a private location without someone's consent filming is illegal. Not to mention improper use of funds at his workplace. We keep talking about where the tipping point is, where The Sun, GB News, and others finally turn on Dan. And I do wonder if this is getting us closer. Some other highlights from this piece. Byline says that they have identified 2 of Wootton's catfishing victims. Byline can confirm, though, that these 2 people have given information to the police about their experiences with Wootton from 2009 to 2016. So this is when he's at News of the World and then The Sun. He is in his early 20s in 2009. So again, he does not have this kind of capital to go running out paying for his crimes by himself. I feel pretty good now about my theory that it's not a third party that's paying him off. There's not some evil overlord, using Dan as a marionette. I think it's just Dan taking advantage of billables from his office. White collar crimemen with a side of, ew, gross, what is wrong with you? So basically this is how it would work. Dan would offer a couple £100 to these adult male performers to use their Facebook profiles. And he would start messaging them as these people. And while he was going, he would be deleting his trail as he went. Then Dan would reach out to the performers and say, hey, I've got a guy here. Are you interested in coming down and filming? One of the performers is quoted as saying, these people we used to meet, I didn't know who they were. I think they were from Dan's circle, and the films were an attempt to get a one-up on them. He can't say for certain that this is what Dan was doing, but he also brings up the point, like, why else would you do this? Why would you go to such lengths? It is either some sort of deviant behavior or something he gets pleasure out of, or it was simply to get blackmail on people that he worked with. And perhaps both, but either way, this is illegal. This is a crime that deserves to be properly investigated, among others. But the big thing is Dan wanted people recorded without their consent. And it appears that in at least 2 of the cases, the performers were unwilling to do that, kind of sabotage the whole thing. The first part, Dan literally drives with the performers like a mafia boss to this target's house. This is 2016, so they go up to this target's house, and he's like, you two really want to film with me? Like, you two porn stars? And they're like, yeah, like, we just like to do this for personal use. The guy is not convinced. So they do a little bit of free play, which is like lighter sexual activity, and then they pull out the camera. And the guy is like, no, I do not want this filmed. So they were like, okay. They go up to Dan, they're like, good and do it. One of the actors tells Byline Times about a time that Wooten wanted him to meet up with someone that he catfished at a local London hotel. And it's a meeting that would have been very close to Dan's flat. In fact, this actor says he even went up to Dan's flat to discuss the details. He says, and this is important, that Dan specifically wanted this individual filmed in secret. According to Dan, the target said that he had agreed to having this filmed in secret for personal use. I don't know if I believe that. But the thing is, Dan would book hotels to where some of these events were being filmed. And here is one of the receipts from June 2016. It's a one-night stay conveniently near his flat. It appears that it was forwarded from Dan to this individual hours before check-in. There's also the FYI Holiday Inn booking. What you doing? Committing crimes at the Holiday Inn. What's also interesting is this originally was to Dan Wooten at the Sun UK. My assumption is that this was booked by somebody on the staff at the Sun, and then they forward him the information to let him know that that had been booked. And it appears that this was booked with the understanding that it had to do with something involving the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case. Oh, but wait, there's a third man that Dan Wooten paid to make a secret film. This was again to an unwilling, unknowing third party in 2012, this time at the London Savoy. Apparently in a suite that was paid for by then sponsors of the BAFTAs, the telecoms company Orange. Good God. So originally this man says that he dealt with Martin Branning, Dan Wooten's alter ego, and had previously made secret filmings for Branning. I'm assuming like his first victim, Dan wanted to make sure that he could trust this individual to film and get the job done before elevating him to this larger catch. Why he unmasks himself as Dan Wooten, I do not know. According to this individual, quote, it was on a Sunday during the BAFTAs while Dan was still at the Sun. I got a message from Wooten himself. He asked me to secretly record me, this is in parentheses, performing a specified sexual act on a man who did not know he was being filmed, end parentheses, at a hotel room at the Savoy for money, end quote. The man goes, but for whatever reason, there is no sexual activity and they just end up getting drunk at the minibar. But he had still been filming, and Dan still wanted that video. I don't remember the story of that government person who was set up in a room with prostitutes in a attempted sting, but this kind of sounds similar. Like, even if they didn't do anything, he could still say, I have video of you getting drunk with a gay man who is known to perform acts for money, and I will let this loose. It wasn't the actual act, but the video would still speak volumes. As of right now, Dan is still doing his nightly show for GB News. He has not done a column for the Daily Mail, though, since the investigation started. Maybe they just quietly put that on the back burner but didn't make a big announcement because they didn't want to make it a huge thing. But that column has quietly disappeared. Apparently, the House of Commons Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee, which is chaired by Conservative MP Dame Caroline Dinenage, I don't know if I'm saying that right, has reached out to the Sun, Victoria Newton, to investigate. Whether there's any actual investigation going on or if this is for appearances, I don't know. Questions posed by Byline Times to News UK have not been answered, although, quote, it has appointed legal firm Kingsley Napley to investigate the allegations made against Wooten, end quote. The question I keep asking, is when does it become more costly to protect Dan Wootton than it is to turn on him? And I'm thinking bigger than money. I'm thinking of impacts or ripple effects that Dan going down could have on the tabloid industry. Will it be crossed? Will we see justice? And what does justice even mean? Is it Dan losing his job? Is it Dan actually being tried for these crimes? What does justice look like? I think that's also a very important question to ask. More to come.
When consuming any form of media, how often do you go back and fact check? I'll be the first to say I probably don't do it enough because it really could be a full-time job. In addition to fact checking, I also like to ask myself the question why. Why are they sharing the information in the first place? Is it strictly informational? Are they trying to persuade me to think a certain way? Are they trying to distract me from something? Are they trying to make money off of something? You get the point. I want to focus on the British media again, in particular self-proclaimed royal expert Tom Bower. I personally have a very hard time believing anything that comes out of this man's mouth, but there was an excellent clip from Good Morning Britain that I want to show you that kind of brings up my point regarding sources.
But you will have had lots of people who did talk to you, yes, off the record, yes, almost certainly with titles. Now, Harry's doing it on the record and you want to remove his titles. What about all your sources? Why don't you report your sources, have their titles stripped? I mean, they're the ones who really damaged the royal family, not Harry.
That's not the same at all.
Of course it's the same.
Well, you think it is. I don't think it is.
Ed, I actually think you can go in heavier. You accuse them of rank hypocrisy because that is precisely what it is. You talk about them making their fortune in Montecito. Arguably, Harry, with good reason. He's had a pretty rough ride in his young life. Meanwhile, you are sitting there in your little establishment position, raking it in.
I really want to be friends with that woman, but there were a lot of great points made. If he's talking to people with titles, why doesn't he reveal his sources? And you can obviously see he's making money. He's written a lot of books, and as she says, he just comments on things and rakes in the money. He's obviously not very good at doing his own homework because Kristen Meisner said Tom Bower lied about her supposed friendship with Meghan Markle in his book that he wrote. I could sit here and tell you thing after thing after thing he's lied about, but I want to get to my next point, which is cherry picking. I would like to throw out that he's never even met Meghan Markle, but for argument's sake, let's just pretend everything he said was true. By that logic, this article would have to be true as well. Tom Bower wrote this for the Daily Mail in 2018, and the title is The Queen's Cold War Against Camilla. Weeks before Charles married, the Queen cut Camilla out of ceremonies and dinners, and the final insult, as Tom Bower reveals, she didn't even talk to her at her own wedding party. According to the article, Charles was very annoyed because Queen Elizabeth disapproved of his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles and was going to have a late-night showdown with his mother at Balmoral. Queen Elizabeth's eyes say it all. It says for years, both the Queen and her mother had refused to have anything to do with Charles' mistress. Not only did they not want her present at any royal function, either formal or informal, they actively disapproved of her and of Charles' relationship with her. According to the article, Camilla wanted to meet William and Harry and to be able to join Charles on holiday and could see no reason almost a year after Diana's death why that shouldn't happen. One thing I found interesting about this article is that there seem to be a lot of direct quotes. So where is Tom Bower getting these from? Is he getting them from a source or is he making them up? Also remember, let's pretend that everything Tom Bower says is true. So if Camilla wanted to meet William and Harry and join Charles on holiday, it seems to me that she's a little too concerned about herself and not really concerned about two little boys who just lost their mother. Now here's where I really want this to be true because I would sell my kidney or maybe even both of them if I was able to witness this interaction. So apparently Charles was asking Queen Elizabeth if he could openly live with Camilla, and this is what she had to say. After she'd had several martinis, and to Charles' surprise, she replied forcefully. She would not condone his adultery nor forgive Camilla for not leaving Charles alone to allow his marriage to recover. Pop off, Queen. It goes on to say that after all of those martinis, she vented her anger that he had lied about his relationship with what she called that wicked woman and added, I want nothing to do with her. Met with a further hostile silence, Charles fled the room and got upset and called Camilla and cried about it. According to Tom Bower, Prince Charles continued to throw his temper tantrum and then complained that neither Diana nor the Queen had ever sympathized with his needs. So that's to them. They seem like very smart women, so maybe it's not them, maybe it's you. Then the article says that Queen Elizabeth punished punished Prince Charles, I don't know how old he was at this time, and said that he could not move into Clarence House, which was his grandmother's home after his 1992 separation from Diana. Instead, he was given St. James's Palace, which is a cold, comfortless dwelling. Then we get to this part of the article, and it's really interesting, and it says, was Camilla truly smitten by Charles? You can pause to read the entire thing, but the part that caught my eye was that Camilla allegedly laughed about Prince Charles and said he was an emotionally immature boy suitable for a fun fling. Now, this is some tea if it's true. I guess Andrew admitted to his friends she's bone idle, so I had to look up the definition of that. Bone idle means extremely lazy and then not willing to work or use effort. Interesting. Now, according to this article, it was Diana's famous 1995 Panorama interview that convinced the Queen that Camilla really needed to go. So it seems that Elizabeth was Team Diana and not Team Charles or Camilla. And then it goes on to say that Prince Charles had another temper tantrum and thought everybody was out to get him for whatever reason. Then Charles allegedly got mad at Princess Anne when she criticized Charles for his adultery. And by the way, did you know that Princess Anne used to date Andrew Parker Bowles, and Camilla interfered in that relationship too? Isn't that interesting? By this point in time, Prince Philip had had enough and decided to write his son a private letter urging him not to marry Camilla. And Charles didn't keep it to himself. He read it out loud to Mark Bolan, his spin doctor, and wanted him to leak it to a newspaper, which he did. I really don't think Queen Elizabeth gets enough credit for every single thing she had to deal with. That woman went through hell. She needed a lot of vacations just by herself. In 2002, when the Queen Mother died, it seems like Queen Elizabeth had had enough, and it was kind of like when a kid is like, Mom, Mama, I need the toy, Mom, I need the toy, Mom, I need the toy, Mom, I needed the toy, and she finally just gave in to him. Now, this is interesting because it says that 3 separate marriage acts specifically forbade the marriage of any member of the royal family in a register office, and he had to get married in a church, yet the Anglican Church would not unite 2 divorcees. Apparently, Charles also ignored the fact that civil marriages must be held in public places. Windsor Castle was the Queen's private home, and she wasn't going to let that happen. So what happened? Some white men just ignored it. Tale as old as time. You can pause to read this, but it actually tracks because I guess Charles said Camilla would be named Princess Consort, but then again, you see that's not true, and she did in fact become the Queen. You can pause to read, but if this is true, it looks like Charles and Camilla were really made for each other. This is a petty queen, and I love it. It says, during the weeks leading up to the big day, she not only excluded Camilla from both royal ceremonies and official dinners, but also remarked that there was very little special Welsh gold left to make Camilla's wedding ring. You know who did get a ring made of the Welsh gold? Meghan and Kate. On the morning of Charles and Camilla's wedding, a small enthusiastic crowd gathered, and then the Queen did her part, made a brief appearance, and then slid into a side room and watched the Grand National race with other racing enthusiasts. I really hope this is true because I guess the Queen enters the reception and everyone gets quiet and she says, I have 2 important announcements to make. I know you will want to know who is the winner of the Grand National. It was Hedgehunter. Yes, I love her. Then I guess she said what she needed to say, and a lot of people failed to notice that she did not mention Camilla by name and did not speak to her during the party. I can't believe it, the new bride repeated to her friends in the room. I can't believe it. I kind of can, and I love that for her. Then apparently Charles wasn't very happy with the gift his mother gave him, which was a broodmare. I'll take the broodmare if it's still available. So my point is this, if people are going to believe all the hate that Tom Bower says about Harry and Meghan, they need to believe what he said about Charles and Camilla too. But I do believe this from Tom Bower. Charles told friends he wants to shy away from a bitter battle with Harry because the king knows better than anyone that Harry has a lot more tea to spill.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell.